Blog Talk Radio.
He is the last of his kind. All that remains of a once powerful nation. Some think he is a myth. Some believe he is the chosen one, who will bring balance to a world at war. And some will stop at nothing to destroy him.
Welcome, everybody to Moorish Talk Live 100. Tonight, our special guest will be Dr. Walter Williams. And we're going to deal with a very, very important issue tonight, why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. Now, that's tall, because we got radio shows, we got magazines, we got newspapers, and we got tons and tons of people out there that don't look like me and you that's telling us that the hieroglyphics has been deciphered, and that's what it says. This is what it means, and this is what that means, and that's what it said. That is quite interesting to me. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to lay the cards on the table so that we can see the historicity, the who's, where's, what's, when's, and why Dr. Walter Williams say the Medu Netcher hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. This is big, and we're going to deal with that tonight so that we can get the record straight. Now, we ain't mad with nobody. This doesn't have anything to do with racism. What we try to do is specialize in telling the truth, because if we tell the truth, we don't have to worry about going around propping nothing up or trying to reclassify something or trying to straighten out anything or trying to defend anything. The truth is just there. You can believe anything you want to believe. The truth is just going to be there. You know, a lot of times people say, well, I don't believe that. Well, it doesn't matter what you believe. You believe anything you want to believe. We're just going to put the truth out there. Take it or leave it. That's the way I see it. And that's what I have a bad habit of doing, telling the truth. There are a lot of people who try to tell the truth. There are a lot of brothers and sisters who want to be truthful and honest and stuff, but in my opinion, they just can't quite get, they want to throw a little bit of something in it. Well, no, you don't. The truth had to be undiluted. And this is just my opinion. You know, we're not trying to compromise. You can't give me $1 million to tell a lie. I'm sorry, I can't do that. You can offer it to me, but I ain't gonna be able to do it. You had to come up with something better than that. And because America believes that everything in America is for sale. Everything. And anytime they run into something they can't buy, well, we can't buy it. We got to destroy it. We can't let it live. We can't buy it. He messing up something. But anyway, we're going to go to the commercial breaks, and when we come back, we're going down into the broadcast, okay? So y'all hold on a minute, and we will be right back, okay?
What does Tarhaka Secured Party and Creditor package entails? Private consultation by phone and email, the correct system for paying your property taxes in the private, the documents you will need to conduct business and transactions, public and private, Tarhaka Library, documents for status change in commerce, master study manuals, and trust guides. Free credit repair with all 3 credit bureaus. A business for you in itself. Educational materials on DVD and CD sent directly to your postal box. 1099's education and how to file. How to become a private banker the right way. Asset building, protection, and investing. We also, for all of our clients, host our private conference calls. To access this kind of education and power, go to www.newdataelimination.com or call me directly, 904-303-9061. Also keep in mind, we have the top, best financial advisors there is. Peace.
The person you want to talk to about beating foreclosure or mortgages or exercising your freedom of right to travel is someone who has already done it and can provide you with proof that they have done it, right? Go to www.newdebtelimination.com. That's www.newdebtelimination.com. Call me, Tarhaka Amana L. Bay. Contact me directly, area code 904-303-9061. 904-303-9061. The person you want to talk to is the person who have done it. If you got problems with credit card debt, student loan, child support, you name it, contact me, Tarhaka Amana L. Bay, 904-303-9061. Go to www.newdataelimination.com. Okay, Moors, we back. Now, my guests have arrived, and he is there. He's waiting to be brought in on the broadcast. But before we do that, I want to give you his position coming from a book that he wrote called The Historical Origins of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams. And underneath the title on the cover of the book, he states the following: there has never been a man that has ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm going to go in here to this book in the appendix, which is found in that book, for those of you who have the book, on page 146. Dr. Walter Williams states the following: why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. Contrary to the teachings of Western institutions, the Medu Netcher or hieroglyphics, which are the pictorial symbols of the ancient Egyptians, have never been deciphered. The following are the reasons. In order for the Medu Netcher or hieroglyphics to have been deciphered, one would have had to ask the ancient Egyptians who drew the symbols what he or she meant for them to be. Now, that's simple enough. To illustrate my point, I would draw a symbol of my own creation, regardless of what type of symbol he put up there. Now, I ask, what is the meaning of this symbol? Realistically, you cannot know until I provide to you with the meaning. No one can put a phonetic alphabetical value to symbols. For example, the symbol of the question mark Can you assign a phonetic alphabetical value such as the letter T, M, P, K, R, etc. to the question mark? The answer is no, because the question mark is telling you something to do to question. If you drive a car, you will test it in 3 categories: eyesight, rules of the road, and symbols. When you were tested for symbols, you were asked what the symbols were telling you to do. In order to know what the symbols are telling one to do, one has to know the meaning of the symbols as standardized by the Division of Motor Vehicles. If you did not know the meaning of the symbols, you failed the test. Also, one cannot use any language, Coptic or otherwise, as a key to understanding the symbols of the hieroglyphics, i.e., you cannot apply language or languages to symbols that one does not know the meaning of, okay? Dr. Williams goes on to state the following: it is impossible to reduce 400 or more symbols of the hieroglyphics to 27 letters of an alphabetical system. What the European did was to decide which hieroglyphic symbols would be used to represent a given letter of the alphabet, i.e. the matched and assigned letters of the alphabet to the hieroglyphic symbols of their choice. Okay, before we go any further, I would like to bring in my illustrious guest, but before I do that, I would like to state to you, if it is anybody who can prove, because we're not here to debate or argue about anything. What we need to see is evidence. No evidence, no case. We will be opening up the phone lines later on in the broadcast. The number to dial into the broadcast is 310-982-4184. You can press 1 on your phone, and that will give me an indication that you have something to say. Okay? But in the meantime, we're going to open up the phone lines to area code 773. 773. Dr. Walter Williams, are you with us? Dr. Williams, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I'm here with you. I'm glad to be with you this evening, this Sunday evening, as always. So I'm here.
Okay. Well, Dr. Williams, we have quite a few new people that will be with us tonight. So could you once again give us a little background information on yourself and the books that you've written, and how people can go about getting them before we get down into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to discuss here tonight, why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. So could you do that for us?
Yes. My name is Walter Williams, and I've written 2 books. One, The Historical Origin of Christianity, the one that Tarhaka was so brilliantly reading from. And that book has been out for 24 years. It's selling all over America, all in the UK, and the Caribbean, and all of the rest of the English-speaking countries around the world. My second book is called The Historical Origin of Islam. In that book, the thesis of that book is saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Prophet Muhammad of Islamic tradition. That book has been out for 14 years. In the first book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, just as Brother Tarhaka stated, that on the front cover of that book, I'm saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. So that, in essence, are my 2 books that are out there. It's been out there, one for 24 years. The other Islam book has been out for 14 years. And I'm coming out, my wife and I, we're coming out with our 3rd book. Should be out before the summer ends or before. It's called Dispelling Myths of Ancient Egypt. And there's a lot of information packed in that book that a conscious reader who is searching to get history structured in the right form for him or her. This book along with my other books that I just mentioned, will give you that structure. Now, we are talking about the hieroglyphics. Those are the pictorial symbols drawn by our ancestors during the time of antiquity, our ancient Egyptian ancestors. They're called Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics. And I state, like he mentioned on page 146 in the Historical Origin of Christianity book, why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. And I use very simple terms. In fact, it's only 4 pages that I use to explain my position on why the hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. And one, like Tarhaka said, is that in order for you to know the meaning of those pictorial symbols drawn by our ancestors, those Africans who lived in the continent of Africa, in Egypt, that was drawn by them, one would have to ask them, he or she, who drew those symbols, what he or she meant for them to be. And they're not around to ask that. The second reason that I'm saying why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics has never been deciphered is that I drew in my book a symbol that I created. And I'm asking the reader or anybody, as they look at the symbol, what is the meaning of this symbol? Quite naturally, no human can tell you the meaning. The only human on earth that can tell you that meaning of the symbol that I drew in the book is me. I drew the symbol. So therefore, you have to ask me what I meant for that symbol to mean. What do you mean by that? What is this symbol? The third thing that I put in the book, I put a symbol of the question mark. The question mark is universal, or shall I say, it's known all over the world, especially in America. That symbol, and I asked the question, can you put an alphabet to that? You got 26 letters of the English alphabet. Can you assign one of those 26 letters of the English alphabet to that symbol, such as a T, P, M, K, R, etc.? Can you assign any alphabetical symbol to that symbol that we know today as being the question mark? No, you can't do that. Because the symbol of the question mark, if you don't know the meaning of that symbol, when you see it, it means for you to ask questions. That's the symbol that is asking you to ask questions. The fourth thing I said, that if an individual go and take a driver's test at the state of where they reside, such as I'm residing in Illinois. So therefore, if I went down to Illinois Department of Vehicles to take a test to get a driver's license, I am tested in 3 things: rules of the road, eyesight, and symbols. When you get to the symbols part, they don't ask you to put an alphabet to it. They ask you the meaning of that symbol. So if you can't explain the meaning of the symbol that is before you during this test period to get your license, if you don't know the meaning of it, you can't explain what that symbol is saying to you, then you then you failed the test. So these are some of the simple things that I put in there, which is very commonsensical, that one cannot repudiate or refute, because I'm putting down facts which are stronger than argument, more profound than reasoning, more dependable than opinions. Silence or dispute supersedes predictions, and facts always ends the argument unless you're talking to an individual who does not recognize the facts. Now, they speak of Champollion, Francois Champollion. They said that he deciphered the hieroglyphs. Well, in 1822, when he came out with the supposed 9 supposed symbols of the hieroglyphs, the 9 that are supposed to be representing Cleopatra, and then he said that he deciphered 7 more, which represents Ptolemy, and both names are in a cartouche. Okay, and so he surmised, or he, let's say, got the idea that this is what, in this cartouche that he supposedly found in Egypt, on the Rosetta Stone, or et cetera, wherever he found it. This is supposed to mean Cleopatra and Ptolemy. Now, his peers in 1822 denounced him, said that he did not decipher the hieroglyphics. And 44 years later, after Champollion was dead in 1866, 44 years later, they said that they found another bilingual stone called the Stone of Canopus. Now, at the time I wrote the book in 1992 and 93, I asked the question, where is the Stone of Canopus? Where can it be found? Who found it? Who dated it? Who named it? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But since then, I found that this Stone of Canopus is now in the Cairo Museum in Egypt. But anyway, moving along with this Canopus stone, they said that since they found this Canopus stone 44 years later, that they're giving credit to Champollion for deciphering those 9 glyphs. But now you got some say there are 400 glyphs, some say there are 700 glyphs, some say there's 1,000 or more glyphs. Okay, so what I'm asking an individual who claims to have deciphered the hieroglyphics, then come and tell me, bring me 400, 700, or 1,000 glyphs and pictorial symbols drawn by our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, and tell me the meaning of each and every one of those hieroglyphics. In other words, you have to explain to me what the meaning of each one of these 400, 700, 1,000 or more glyphs mean. Okay? You can't put an alphabet to a symbol. Symbols have to be explained if you know the meaning of it. Okay? Then in my book, I go on to explain whereby there's a professor named Carol Andrews, a female who has taught at Oxford University in England. She wrote a book for the British Museum. It's called The Rosetta Stone. And in this book, she is saying, strictly speaking, the hieroglyphics cannot be deciphered. In other words, she is saying that what they're using those symbols for is for codex purposes, indexing purposes, and cataloging purposes, which was done by Samuel Birch when Baptista Balzoni, the strong circus man who was sent by the British Museum in 1818 into Egypt, armed with a group of men, along with money, to influence his way to get by any means necessary, artifacts to bring back to the British Museum. In fact, he did just that, and to the tune of that, he brought back enough artifacts out of Egypt by way of hook or crook, by any means necessary, bribing, etc., that fill 4 stories of that museum. So when that museum opened up in 1831, 32, 33 in that area, Samuel Birch was the man that indexed and cataloged these various artifacts. If he saw the same symbol on certain artifacts, he would put it in a certain catalog number, etc., etc. This is what Carol Andrews was saying, you see. And then there is the American Dictionary of the English Language, the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, are saying that when you get to the dictionary, using that dictionary, looking up the word hieroglyphics in that dictionary is saying that the hieroglyphics is unlegible and undecipherable. It can't be deciphered. That's one source. That's the second source. Another source is that when right here in Chicago, I went over to the University of Chicago, and that was a man by the name of Peter Piccioni. He was teaching a hieroglyphics class, 12 weeks, and I asked him, Professor Piccioni, in your opinion, do you think the hieroglyphics has been deciphered? Quite naturally, he says yes because he's teaching it. But when I pressed him more, he had to admit, no, they have not been deciphered. This is something that we use among us European scholars as a consensus as to the hieroglyphics being deciphered. And I asked another professor over there, Frank Yurko, the same thing. And when he was pressured by me, he admitted the same thing, that the hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. Okay, so these are some of the main reasons why I am saying that the hieroglyphics has never been deciphered, and I wrote it in my book on page 146, in the historical origin of Christianity, why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. So I stand on that scholarship that I've written in that book. Brother Tarhaka?
Okay, Dr. Walter Williams, you made yourself perfectly clear in what you're saying. And I think the listening audience need to understand the magnitude of what you're saying, because it is 100 million times what we would see when we see salmons swimming upstream instead of downstream against the waves and currents and rush. This is awesome because we have people who are out there actually teaching this, and we have to keep in mind that these people there are hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars being invested in to support a lie, and it's being fed to the minds of young people, the young seeds that's coming up, who will attempt to, once they get this lie impregnated in their brain, they would attempt to debate with you and overlook the truth, avoid common sense, sidestep reason, duck reality and everything else to support what they believe in, because they have been indoctrinated by the brain. So my question to you is, as a result of the professors that you questioned, who told you the truth, who were involved in perpetrating and propagating and fostering and producing and funneling and teaching this lie, how devastating has this been on the American population, in your opinion?
Well, it's been devastating on the whole world population, especially us Africans who are born in the United States of America, who have no national identity. And I'm trying to get them back to ancient Egypt so we, as an African people born in America, can have a national identity. Now, what they have done, I'm talking about Western academia, what they have done is that they have institutionalized those symbols that we know today, that was drawn by our ancestors, those Africans who lived in the continent of Africa, who lived in a country called Egypt, and from their culture came forth civilization for all of humanity, that including writing, the first literate people on planet Earth. And in their first form of communications, the first form of communication from these great and grand and glorious people called the ancient Egyptians came forth, those pictorial symbols that we know today as the hieroglyphs. Now, in order for the European to institutionalize them in their institution, they have to have devised a devious idea and a plan by way of consensus among them to say that the Europeans, have deciphered the hieroglyphics. In order for them to bring them into their institutions, to give their students who study in Near Eastern studies and archaeology, that they can now give them a degree and call them Egyptologists. Because without understanding those symbols, you cannot understand the culture of our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. So their way, by way of consensus, they have brought and took these symbols and claimed that Champollion and others, Thomas Young, etc., have indeed deciphered the hieroglyphics. You see, so Walter Williams come along, a descendant of the ancient Egyptians, along with 50 or 60 million of us Africans living and born in America. We are all descendants of those greatest people that's ever walked this earth. But we have been taught away from the knowledge and the connection racially and spiritually with our own ancestors by way of the school system. Okay, at this very moment that I'm talking to you, European races of people have control of ancient Egypt, over there as I speak. Egypt, as I speak, is occupied by occupiers. They are known as Arabs. Those white European Arabs are over there today. And they live in Egypt, and they can say that they are Egyptians, but they are not descendants of the ancient Egyptians. In order to be a descendant of the ancient Egyptians, the qualification for that is that you have to be African in order for you to be a descendant of the ancient Egyptians. So they're not. So therefore, they're over there. They have no personal stake in ancient Egypt. But these Europeans over there every day, been over there way back in the 18th century, of that digging up our ancestors' graves and artifacts, and they all around the world at this very moment that I'm talking to you. They're all over the world, in museums all over the world, in private collections all over the world, in homes all over the world. You see? So, but we have been torn away from that. We don't even in our conscious thinking, we don't even think of ancient Egypt. The majority of us Africans living in the continent of America. So we have to get back to our ancestral roots and identify and claim our greatness, which is lying in the continent of Africa unclaimed, and that's ancient Egypt. From that one culture, from that one people, race of people on earth, ancient Egypt, those Africans came forth civilization for all of humanity. So we're going to have to come in and claim our greatness. We're going to have to right the wrongs that the European has done to us. My two books, The Historical Origin of Christianity and The Historical Origin of Islam, and the third book coming out, Dispelling Myths of Ancient Egypt, is a step forward in that direction. We have to expose Western academia for what they have done to our ancestors, what they are still doing to our ancestors, and how they have taught the descendants of the ancient Egyptians away from ancient Egypt, okay, and put our ancestors in slavery, okay? But they right today in Washington, D.C., they have at the Smithsonian Institute, they have a display there called the African American Museum of History and Culture. They are implying that our history, us Africans born in America, 50 to 60 million of us, our history started with slavery. No. So they have a great big slave ship that housed that museum. Why didn't they house the Christopher Columbus ship that brought the Moors out of Spain over here, okay? Who brought civilization and set up civilization in this hemisphere, which was can be recorded in history as the third civilization. They didn't do that. So what they did, they took the Moors and those enslaved Africans that they took out of Africa in 1619, those human beings, and they put the Moors and those enslaved Africans under one umbrella, and they identified all of the Africans, including the Moors, as Negroes. Negro means black in Spanish, so Negro and black is synonymous, you see? So we are all descendants, these Africans, us Africans in the United States of America, are descendants of the greatest people that have ever walked this earth, known in history as the ancient Egyptians. And we have to get back to that identity and claim our greatness. We have to unify around a nationality. We, at this point, do not have a national identity as a nationality, as a people to identify with and to claim and hang our greatness and inventions and creation that we are creating every day and have created every day in this country. We, Africans living in this country, are the leaders of the world. We are the Pied Pipers of the world. The world is following this American-born Negro. Don't be naive about that statement now. Everything we do over in this country, the whole world copies us and emanate us, or try to emanate us. We created jazz music, gospel, blues, all the dance routines out there that you see in the world and being practiced in the world today. All came from this Negro. I can go on and on and on and on. So therefore, we're going to have to get back to the roots of that and understand who we are as a people, understand our ancestors are indeed those great and grand and glorious Africans who lived in the continent of Africa, in Egypt, and from their culture came forth all of civilization for humanity. They were the only literate people on planet Earth during the time of antiquity. Why? Because they created an alphabet. An alphabet makes an individual literate. That alphabet, if you know the alphabet, you will be able to read, write, and spell by using that alphabet and knowing that alphabet. So therefore, you become a literate people. At the time of antiquity, our ancestors, by them creating this alphabet, they were the only literate people on planet Earth. They also created mathematics, all forms of mathematics. That's how they built the Great Pyramid. That Great Pyramid stands, when it was originally built, went from the ground up to 490 feet high, okay, with our casing stones that were weighed over 250 tons. So it's still a mystery today how they got those stones on the outer casings and bricks up from the ground 490 stories high. And the base of the pyramid on each side, you have 4 sides to that base. Each side is measured 756 feet wide. That's awesome. They also created and built the Sphinx. The body of the Sphinx is 1 city block long, 6 stories high, with an African face carved on that stone called monument called the Sphinx, to let the world know that they are Africans. I didn't say we're Africans. They still are Africans because they left the world and us, their descendants, an immortal legacy that's in stone, monuments, artifacts, and literature and art. So therefore, these are some of the things that we're going to have to know in order to claim our greatness that's lying in the continent of Africa, in Egypt. Brother Tarhaka?
Okay, based on what you just told me, I have to gather that you're saying that the hieroglyphics, the Medu Netcher, the pyramids, and the Sphinx were built by ancient African Egyptians, the original people of the earth. And second, what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that the ancient African Egyptians and the people, the ancient people that are calling themselves Moors are one and the same people. Am I correct in that? And this is for the record. I want to make sure that we get this on the record. The ancient Egyptians were African, and the ancient Moors were African. They are descended to the original people on the planet that goes all the way back to the original creator. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the Moors and the ancient Egyptians are one and the same.
Okay.
There's no difference. They are Africans. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that from the culture of the ancient Egyptians, and that culture was in the continent of Africa, in Egypt. From their culture came civilization. So our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, are the first and oldest civilized people on planet Earth. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would put it. And I can prove that. How do you prove that? Is that they were the first people to have literacy, to have an alphabet. That's how you prove that. And no other race of people during the time of antiquity, which is ancient times, had a writing system or an alphabet, but the ancient Egyptians. So that makes them the world's first and oldest civilized people on planet Earth. Okay? And they live in they live in the Nile Valley, which is known as the Nile Valley Civilization. Now you have 8 to 9 countries that's under the umbrella of the African Ancient Egyptian Commonwealth, as I named it, a.k.a. the Nile Valley Civilization. Those 8 countries or the 9 countries are Abyssinia, also known today as Ethiopia, Nubia, also known as the Sudan, and Egypt. Egypt was the capital of the African Ancient Egyptian Commonwealth, a.k.a. the Nile Valley. Now, Egypt is in North Africa, and west of Egypt, on the same umbrella that's under the Commonwealth of ancient Egypt, you have the country called Libya. It's west of Egypt. Tunisia, west of Egypt. Algeria, west of Egypt. Morocco, west of Egypt. Mauritania, west of Egypt. So you have 8 countries there. And then if you go further south in Uganda, where the supply of water coming out of Tanzania, out of Mount Kilimanjaro, that water that's melted ice and snow coming out from the mountain called Mount Kilimanjaro into Lake Victoria, you have a people that are known as the Twa people. So if an individual wants to add Uganda as the 9th country to the African Ancient Egyptian Commonwealth, a.k.a. the Nile Valley, you feel free to do that. So what I'm saying to you, at a certain time in history, given the fact that when white European Spain in the middle of the 11th century asked Africans from North Africa, who was part of the Nile Valley civilization, who was part of that commonwealth of the ancient Egyptians, who lived in Morocco and Mauritania, those white European Spaniards asked these Africans to come into Spain and civilize them. And they crossed the Mediterranean from Morocco and Mauritania, and the Spanish people called them Moors. That's a nickname given to those Africans who lived in Morocco, okay? And they're called also call them black Moors. And as I said before, the word black and Negro is synonymous, so they're calling them Negro Moors. So they were black Moors, given the name by the Spanish to these Africans who brought this and set up the second civilization on planet Earth. Okay, that was in Spain. Okay, so and then they were over there for 427 years until the Spanish Inquisition came into play in 1478, created by Ferdinand and Isabella and the Roman Catholic Church. We have to add the Roman Catholic Church in there. I'm not letting them off the hook because the Roman Catholic Church had just set up the seat of Christianity that was transferred out of Northeast Africa into Europe in 1439 by John VIII, who came out of Northeast Africa, out of the double-walled city of Constantinople, and relinquished from the first seat of Christianity that was housed in the Hagia Sophia, the very first Christian church ever built on planet Earth. He relinquished what is known in history as the donation of Constantine. And I speak about the donation of Constantine in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. And he, in 1439, he made it possible for the seat to be transferred from out of Africa into Europe on the outskirts of Rome. Over the catacombs, 6 years after he did that, in 1445, Eugenius IV and Nicholas V began to dig up over the catacombs those dead bodies that was buried down in the ground by the Romans. They dug up those bodies to make way for the building of St. Peter's Church that was broke ground to build that church in 1445. Today, St. Peter's Church is known as St. Peter's Basilica. And those Europeans on the outskirts of Rome who set up the beginning of the building of the Vatican asked those same Moors, those same Africans that were in Spain, who had set up a civilization in Spain for the white European Spanish-speaking people. They asked those same Moors to come into the Vatican, that we know today as the Vatican, or come into the suburbs of Rome and build for them the St. Peter's Church. A lot of the scholars, in fact, I've never heard any scholars talk about this connection that in 1445, you remember the Renaissance here started in the 15th century to 1400s. So therefore, in 1445, the Renaissance era was only 45 years old. So therefore, the Europeans didn't have the concept of building. They were illiterate people because the Renaissance era brought them out of the darkness in the Dark Ages into the light. So, as you know, the Renaissance era caused the teachings of the masses of Europeans living in Europe who could not read or write a beginning history of them knowing or learning how to read and write. That's called the Renaissance era, the age of learning. So therefore, they didn't have the knowledge to build a St. Peter's Church known as St. Peter's Basilica. They did not have the knowledge of building, etc., etc. So the Moors came over there, and they are the ones that built that St. Peter's Church known today as St. Peter's Basilica. If you look on my book, The Historical Origin of Islam, you'll see a picture of the world's first Christian church, the Hagia Sophia. Okay? You'll see that. And that you see how it was designed and built by our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. So the Moors, the people that the Spanish call the Moors, and the ancient Egyptians are one and the same. So they knew how to build. They knew mathematics and so forth and so on, because they had set up literacy by setting up school systems in Spain. They set up a government for the Spanish speaking people. They began to build all through Spain, creating cities such as Seville, Toledo, Granada, Cadillac, etc., etc. And they also introduced bath houses, public bath houses over there, thereby introducing soap to the Europeans for the very first time. So now they knew how to build. So 394 years later, over the catacombs, these Romans asked the Moors to come in and build the Vatican for them. They did. So they began to build, like I mentioned, St. Peter's Church, known today as St. Peter's Basilica. They also built that Sistine Chapel, okay, in 1473. That's where the residence of the popes live today. They the ones that built the Sistine Chapel in 1473. Okay? So now, in 1478, Ferdinand and Isabella created what is known in history as the Spanish Inquisition. And they hired a man by the name of Thomas de Guatemala to be the Inquisitor General to get rid of those black Moors, those African Egyptian Moors out of Spain because of racial and religious reasons. So they hired a ship owner by the name of Christopher Columbus. And also, the Roman Catholic Church allied with the Spanish government to do just that. And they also call themselves having the same type of inquisition against those African Moors. They call it the Roman Inquisition. The Roman Inquisition and the Spanish Inquisition are one and the same. Thomas de Guatemala was the Inquisitor General for the country of Spain, was the Inquisitor General for the Roman Catholic Church. So the Roman Catholic Church and the country of Spain allied with each other, you see, and they brought those Moors, some of them, a lot of them went back into North Africa. A lot of them went into Mali. A lot of them went into Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but this group of Moors came over in this hemisphere that we're talking about at this very moment, that they came over here and they set up the third civilization over here. Now, that was in 1492. In 1619, the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Roman Catholic Church went into Africa and brought out human beings to bring into this hemisphere to make slaves out of. Okay, don't leave the Roman Catholic Church out, because they had slave plantations scattered in this country, around this country also. Okay, but that goes into another subject. Now, from 1492 to 1619 is a period of 127 years. No one talks about what went on within that 127 years time span. The Moors were setting up civilization in this hemisphere until they wanted to get rid of the Moors, erase them out of history. And so what they did, like I said before, they put the enslaved African that they took out of Africa and the Moors who were free Africans living in this hemisphere. They put them all under one umbrella, and they named them Negroes, which in Spanish means black. Black and Negroes is one and the same, synonymous, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, now, Dr. Williams, you have laid that out beautifully, and we are coming down to the close of the first hour, and I definitely have some more questions And what I want to do at this point is take a little quick break, because you've said a lot. You have laid this thing out for us, and what I want to do is take a little quick break, and when we come back, I want to give the other side an opportunity to prove for themselves that the hieroglyphics, the Medu Netcher hieroglyphics, have been deciphered, and to give us the facts and to see how they would deliver that. Would they deliver it with facts, or will they tell us a story masquerading as facts? So if you would hold on a minute, I'm going to take a little quick break, and when we come back, then we're going to get down in there, because I got many more questions to ask, okay?
Okay.
All right, y'all hold on a minute.
You don't have to lose your home due to foreclosure. You don't have to worry about child support. You don't have to be in credit card debt. Have no fear. Tarhaka Armana El Bey is here at newdebtelimination.com. Got student loans, child support, mortgages? Contact someone who's got the experience and the knowledge to get you back under God's law. That's Tarhaka Armana El Bey. He's been there, he's done that, and he can prove it. Just give him a call at 904-303-9061. That number again is 904-303-9061. And log on to newdebtelimination.com. That's newdebtelimination.com, and get yourself free.
Okay, for those of you who are just tuning into the broadcast, we're listening to Dr. Walter Williams, author of The Historical Origin of Christianity and The Historical Origin of Islam. Two separate books. You can get those books right there at Amazon. He'll be coming out with a new book soon, before the summer is over. But what we're going to do now is we're going to see whether or not there are facts and with the story that is being told, and we have other questions that we're going to be asking Dr. Walter Williams. So if you hold on, I'm going to run this plug so we can see where we are and what's going on about this particular misinformation, where it came from, how it derived, and what they have to say about it. So if you hold on a minute, we'll be right back, okay? Just hold on.
How is it that Egyptologists can read hieroglyphics? And they can read it very fluently. Well, the decipherment of hieroglyphics is an interesting story also. There was a French boy, Champollion, Francois, I believe, who at the age of 8 or 9 decided he's going to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics. Nobody knew how. He just decided that was his goal in life. So he began to study. He studied Hebrew and Greek and Coptic, which is Egyptian, late Egyptian. And he became fluent in these languages. And he studied Egyptian inscriptions, couldn't make head or tail out of them, all these beautiful symbols, until Napoleon invaded Egypt. Napoleon's invasion of Egypt was 1799, I believe. And his soldiers discovered this stone in a place called Rashid, which is called the Rosetta Stone, the Rosetta Stone. Now, the Rosetta Stone is fascinating because it has an inscription in Egyptian hieroglyphics, followed by an inscription in what we call Egyptian Demotic, a different form of Egyptian, followed by an inscription in Greek. So you read the inscription in Greek, and you think that's the meaning of the Egyptian inscription. And the inscription was made during the reign of a Greek king by the name of Ptolemy. After Alexander the Great, all the pharaohs of Egypt were Ptolemies, and most of the queens were Cleopatras. So it was during the reign of Ptolemy and Cleopatra. So Champollion looked at that inscription, noticed that certain groups of symbols were enclosed in an oval called a cartouche. It's an oval, and these names are enclosed. So he decided these may be the royal names. And as he looked at them, he saw that there were certain symbols that appeared in both. Ptolemy, you have PTL. Cleopatra, you have KLPT. He began to compare them and reached the conclusion that one of them was Ptolemaeus and the other was Cleopatra. Then he took these symbols and began to apply them to other symbols. And since he already knew the Egyptian language from his study of Coptic, he began to recognize, gradually he began to decipher, and Champollion actually read Egyptian inscriptions, began to read Egyptian inscriptions. He deciphered Egyptian. It was a single-handed operation. And the devotion, you see. He decided and he did it. And of course then, once it became clear that Egyptian could be read, and then they began to copy these inscriptions. And of course, there's so many books. Gardner's grammar, Alan Gardner published a grammar, Egyptian grammar, and it's so beautifully arranged. You just, page by page, you study Egyptian grammar by Gardner, you can learn how to read Egyptian. And it's so simple, it's so clear. It's a giant volume, but tells you everything. And then, of course, it became an open knowledge. And then Breasted, as a historian, I think he's a romantic, but as an Egyptologist, linguist, he's a master. He published the Ancient Records of Egypt, Royal Records of Egypt, in 5 volumes. And that's as complete a record as we have of Egyptian inscriptions in hieroglyphic from all of these, not only the stone inscriptions, but also the papyrus inscriptions. And also hieroglyphic was written on stone. It was carved into stone and then written in pen and ink on papyrus. So that's the way Egyptian was deciphered. The Rosetta Stone, of course, is the great bilingual, and that people say, if we can only find the Rosetta Stone for this or that language. And another great bilingual was discovered in, I believe it was 1950, in Turkey, where this gigantic inscription was found in Phoenician. Because anybody who studies a little bit can read Phoenician. And the other side was in Hittite hieroglyphic, which was a puzzle for a long time. And the discoverer decided he's going to take the Phoenician inscription, publish it, and let everybody read it, obviously to tell them what the contents are. And as soon as it appeared, of course, it appeared in, my teacher Cyrus Gordon translated it, Theodore Gaster, another one of my teachers translated it, and it was published in many places because Phoenician is close to Hebrew. And it's a very long inscription. Then Bossert, the discoverer who was working on Hittite hieroglyph, began to decipher Hittite hieroglyph based on this translation. It's still a job, still a tough job, but these are the keys, and you find these keys, it's wonderful. And of course, one of the great aids to the decipherment, to the understanding of the Sumerian language was the fact that many Babylonian dictionaries were written. I'm talking about 1800 BC, 2500 BC, dictionaries, Babylonian, Sumerian, Babylonian. And in Ugarit, they discovered a quadrilingual dictionary, a clay tablet, 4 languages in columns: Babylonian, Ugaritic, I think Hurrian was one of the languages, and Assyrian, or Sumerian. So you have 4 languages. And there are many dictionaries, but not all of them, you see. Even the Hurrian, the bit of Hurrian is not enough. It would be nice to discover more. An interesting point about the Hurrian language, it was the language spoken by the Hurrians who were ruling over certain parts of the Middle East at the time. There was a king by the name of Dushrata, king of Mitanni. Mitanni was a kingdom on the Euphrates River. the border between what is now Iraq and Syria. Dushrata, king of Mitanni, is known, and he's written letters, but one letter he wrote to Amarna, the capital, could not be understood. He wrote it in Hurrian, not in Babylonian. And so Dushrata's letter, which he wrote in Hurrian, became one of the sources for the decipherment of the Hurrian language, but it's difficult because there's no translation. But the question was, why did he write it in Hurrian, not in Babylonian? Oh, that's my theory. He wrote it in Hurrian for the Hurrian ambassador in Egypt, not for anybody else to read, because he knew that the letters came into the chancery. Of course, I'm sure that there were Egyptians who found this letter and said, well, let's find out what he's saying. And they probably had a scribe or some linguist who could translate it, because they were all polyglots. All of these scribal places in the ancient world were polyglot. I mean, the scribes knew several languages. They had to.
Okay, I'm back. Dr. Williams, are you still with us? Dr. Williams. Well, until Dr. Williams get back, we'll take a little quick break, and then we will be right back, because this is very, very interesting, and I definitely have some questions. But before we do, first of all, I want to give a shout out to the brothers and sisters who've gotten the Tarhaka Secure Party and Creditor set up. Well done. And there's no doubt in my mind that you guys are making progress. We ain't going to get all into that because everything is on the private side. We're not putting out a whole lot of information because it's private. But let me go back to our illustrious guest. Dr. Williams, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Brother Tarhaka?
Loud and clear. What you think about those, that information that they put out? They mentioned the Rosetta Stone, and they mentioned all this stuff. What's your take on that, man?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth, Brother Tarhaka. 99 9/10 of every word that came out of that person's mouth by way of that recording is based off of a lie.
Okay.
He's using all kinds of biblical characters, the Hurrians and the Edomites and the Akkadians and all that type of. It's nothing. Everything he spoke about came out of the Bible. So therefore, Western academia is putting out these type of lies and giving degrees on that. Like I mentioned before, he mentioned his 2 or 3 teachers. That means that guy has got some type of degree from a university to be taught by those so-called teachers, okay? And he is in the university sitting up in a chair getting a salary, passing this misinformation, which is nothing but lies, on to the next generation. You see? So this is how they do that, and they get away with it because they are attached to a great big old institution, big sprawling institution, great big impressive buildings, brick buildings and stone and so forth and so on. And he has a title. He's doctor this and he's doctor that and he's professor this and professor this of Near Eastern studies and so forth and so on. So he has an impressive title, impressive institution that he's connected with. So people say, wow, this must be the truth. So they go to the same institution where these lies are being disseminated to get them a degree. So it's passed on to generations. So my opinion of what I heard, 99 and 9/10, every word that came out of his mouth was a lie. So that's my opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, now he mentioned the Rosetta Stone. Could you give us some background information on the Rosetta Stone? What is it? Where did it come from? What's that about? As if that holds some type of significance. Could you give us a breakdown on that? You know anything about that?
Yes. Well, here the Rosetta Stone, the traditional history attached to the Rosetta Stone is that in 1799. Napoleon Bonaparte from France took a group of linguistic scholars and forensic scholars and other scholars over into Egypt to plunder Egypt like the rest of the white Europeans was doing. And while over there plundering Egypt, Napoleon and his group found a stone that is known as the Rosetta Stone. They found it in Rosetta, Egypt. The British had control of Egypt at that time, and they would not allow Napoleon to take that stone out of Egypt. What he did, he and his group, they made rubbings on that stone, and they took the rubbings back to Europe with them and passed it among other scholars around Europe. Now, let's get back to the supposed origin of that stone. The supposed origin of that stone was it was created supposedly by our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, as a commemorative stone given to Ptolemy V Epiphanes at his coronation. In other words, at his swearing in as being a Ptolemaic ruler of Egypt. Okay, and we're talking about around the time of 182, 184 BC. Okay, so he was the fifth Ptolemy, and at his coronation, these group of Melkite Coptic Egyptians created for him, for his coronation, or for his swearing in as the ruler of ancient Egypt, the Ptolemaic ruler of ancient Egypt. The word Ptolemy means ruler of ancient Egypt, Greek ruler of ancient Egypt. That is the meaning of Ptolemy. But anyway, this stone was supposed to be a commemorative stone, which was a bilingual stone, meaning that it was inscribed in more than one type of alphabet. The first part of the Rosetta Stone, you have hieroglyphic pictorial symbols drawn. Those symbols are drawn, not written, because you cannot write a symbol. You can only draw a symbol or a sign. So the first section of the Rosetta Stone was symbols called the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics. The middle part of the Rosetta Stone was supposed to have made up what is known as the hieratic part, or the cursive form of writing, which was an alphabet. That's your middle part of the Rosetta Stone. And the last part was supposed to be in Greek letters. Okay? Greeks coming into Egypt under Alexander the Greek, when they came in 332 BCE, they could not read or write. They came out of Greece, out of Macedonia, which is the southern part of Europe, which is called the Balkans. They came from those two locations into Egypt. They couldn't read or write, nor did Europe have any literacy in Europe at that time. Only time that Europe had literacy was in the 15th and 16th century during the Renaissance era. So today, as I speak, Europeans have been literate for 620 years. That's it. 620 years. So now, getting back to that Rosetta Stone, how did the Greek alphabet come on that Rosetta Stone? Since what I just told you about the Greeks and the Europeans not being illiterate people, in order to be literate, you have to have an alphabet. How did the Greeks get an alphabet? Well, this is how they did it. When Alexander the Greek, I noticed that this guy called him the Great. I don't call no European great when they came in and disrupted the culture and terrorized our ancient Egyptian ancestors. The best I can call Alexander is the Greek. When Alexander the Greek came into Egypt, they forced the Greek language on our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. And our ancient Egyptian, Melkite Coptic Egyptians, learned the language that was forced on them that is known as Greek. And they applied an alphabet to that language because they were literate people having an alphabet, word literate. That alphabet made them literate. So that's how the Greek language got an alphabet, but the Greeks never had an alphabet to come into Egypt or bring into Egypt. So on that stone, at the very bottom of that stone, got three sections. The first section, like I mentioned, is of pictorial symbols known as the hieroglyphs or the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics. The middle section is known as the hieratic section. If you want to add Demotic, you can do that, which is a cursive form of an alphabet. And the third and last section of the Rosetta Stone is in Greek. Okay, so that's some of the history of the Rosetta Stone without going into a long dissertation about it. Brother Tarhaka.
All right. I certainly appreciate that, Dr. Williams, and that is very important information. And my next question, in my opinion, this is a question I think we need to answer, and I think it will shed a tremendous light on what we are talking about. My question is this: who stands to benefit as a result of telling people in the United States of America and the world that the hieroglyphics have been deciphered? Who is it that stands to benefit, in your opinion?
The individuals or the institutions that are created by Western academia, Europeans. Western means European. They stand to benefit the most because in order for them, like I mentioned before, to control the culture and the civilization that our ancient Egyptian African ancestors created over in the continent of Africa in Egypt, issuing from their culture came civilization. And the first form of civilization is literacy. So they stand the most to gain by that, because in order for them to institutionalize our ancestors' drawings known as the hieroglyphics, pictorial symbols or signs, they had to find a consensus way among each of them or each European scholar to say that they, the European, had deciphered the hieroglyphics. So in order to institutionalize that, they had to do that, and that way they can call themselves and give out degrees and say that they, Europeans, are now Egyptologists. You see? So they stand to gain the most. So that's my answer to you, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, but now, you told me who was responsible and what they stood to gain. My next question is, in your opinion, on a scale from 1 to 10, how profitable has it been from the time that the lie was told until today? What is your take on the profitability of this particular lie for the people who, when they first told it until the day? How profitable has it been for them?
Very profitable, simply because they have set themselves up in their institution, claiming that they have Europeans, have deciphered the hieroglyphics. So therefore, anybody in the world, of any race, creed, or color, including us Africans, who are direct descendants of the ancient Egyptians, in order for anybody, including us, who wants to know the meaning of the hieroglyphics, we have to ask Europeans now. So that's one way they profit by that. So they can strut around the world and claim in their institutions, Europeans themselves can say that we, Europeans, have deciphered the hieroglyphics. Number two, they profit by billionaires and millionaires contributing money to their institutions. For instance, right here in Chicago, you got an institution called the University of Chicago. The University of Chicago was funded by John D. Rockefeller. Okay? Now, when he brought that land on the Midway here on the south side of Chicago, he bought that land from Marshall Fields, who him and Marshall Fields had a business trade-off for that land. So John D. Rockefeller invested and created the University of Chicago. He also, the first institution he created over there was the Chicago Theological Seminary over there to teach students who came to that seminary Christian religious ideology and teach them the Bible, etc., etc., etc. Now, the Rockefeller family, even though they were rich millionaires and billionaires, they were Baptist Christians, okay? And they were agents for the for the Rothschild family of England. They had married into that family. So Rockefeller became an agent for the Rothschilds, along with J.P. Morgan and others that were agents over in this country, of what we call the United States of America. So when the expansion of that Chicago Theological Seminary was brought into being, John D. Rockefeller expanded that land and used that land to build other buildings on that land, and they called it the University of Chicago. That came forth as a university in 1893, with the funding of John D. Rockefeller's money. Now, also, this guy in this piece that you just played mentioned James Henry Breasted.
Okay.
James Henry Breasted was connected with John D. Rockefeller also, as well as the University of Chicago. James Henry Breasted asked John D. Rockefeller to finance his expositions into Egypt. John D. Rockefeller said that he couldn't do that under the name of him using Egypt. So therefore, he said, well, I will create a museum for you called the Oriental Museum. You see, they didn't want to use Egypt, the name Egypt attached to that museum. So he used and created, John D. Rockefeller did by way of his money, created what is known as the Oriental Institute or museum that's over there today as I speak. And that was instigation coming from James Henry Breasted for him to do that. He asked him to do that. So, and then he used his money to expand those buildings that's on the Midway on the south side of Chicago. And he also put up and built what is known on that same campus of the University of Chicago, the Rockefeller Chapel. So that's my answer to you, Brother Tarhaka, when you asked me what profit the Europeans, will get out of saying that they have deciphered the hieroglyphics.
Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate that, Dr. Williams. You laid that out superbly. I have another question, and it's my understanding, and this is just based on a small looking glass that I see, that the Roman Catholic Church, they have, and I've studied this quite extensively, but I never looked at it from a position that I've looked at it in the past 2 weeks. And my question to you is, and if you could elaborate on what you do know based on, I know maybe you haven't done any in-depth research on it, but are there pedophiles inside the Roman Catholic Church?
Yes. The Roman Catholic Church is the incubator for those little white males that stretch around their little red shoes and their gowns and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
The Roman Catholic Church is the incubator for that. Yes, the answer is yes. They, today as I speak, have spent millions of dollars to settle pedophile cases that these priests have took little boys in their parish and who was supposed to be under their tutelage and molested them. They had a movie out about that about 3 years ago. I can't think of the name right now, but anyway, the answer would be yes. That is the incubator and the haven. The Roman Catholic Church, as I speak, is still the incubator and haven for white male pedophiles that is still being initiated in the practice of Roman Catholicism today in the church that we know today as the Roman Catholic Church. Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, now, Dr. Williams, we do have people of African descent that are also in the Roman Catholic Church. Have you ever ran into any kind of information where these particular people of African descent have participated in pedophilia? Have you ever ran into that any kind of way, any kind of information? Has there ever been? And the reason I'm asking is because I haven't seen anything on the news about it, because I don't look at TV, but I would think that somebody would say something, but nobody says something, because that's where I get my news from. Even about the Super Bowl, even though I was late on even knowing it was a Super Bowl. But how could you answer that one? Have you ran anything about the people of African descent that were pedophiles inside the Roman Catholic Church as priests or bishops or what have you?
Yes, I have. Some years back, I would say about 15 years ago or more, on the Oprah Winfrey show, she had a African priest that was a priest in the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. He had went to jail for pedophilia against little boys in his church dominance. Mm-hmm. And he had did his time, and he came out, and Oprah was interviewing him on there about his homosexuality. Okay. He admitted that he did, in fact, molested boys in his charge, under his charge. Okay. And there was a woman in the audience, an elderly lady, said and spoke out, said, no, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. And Oprah told her, said, well, now, here is this ex-priest is telling you that he did do molestation against little children under his tutelage and guidance and protection. So he is saying it out of his mouth. And the lady said, oh, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So, yes, the answer to your question, that is one incident that I can point to answer your question as being yes, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, well, at this point, Dr. Williams, before we go into the rest of the questions of our break, I have to tell you a story because I had my youngest son. He was living with me, and my job was to take him to school and go back and pick him up and bring him home, and he was spending time with me. But this particular day, they called me from the school, and they told me that my son had bit the principal. And that was very, very disturbing for me. And I said, I'm on my way right now. And I went up, and I headed to school, and, I had my belt on and all of that good stuff. And when I got to the school, I was met by one of the teachers in the school, and she directed me to the principal's office. And he was sitting in the principal's office. But when I burst in there, because I came through the doors like King Kong, because this was very, very disturbing to me. And the principal, he stood up and he began to explain to me what he was trying to do and how he was trying to explain to my son. And he said, and he bit me. But every word that came out of his mouth told me that he was a homosexual. And when I coming from where I come from, I could sense it if he's a block away. He don't even have to open his mouth. But I said, well, okay, well, I'm finna take him on to the house and this and stuff. And as I was going along, I asked my son, I said, well, why did you bite the principal? He said, because he was messing with me. I said, well, okay. But in my mind, I didn't ask him any more questions. But, and I'm not going to say tonight what I thought about the situation. But as far as I was concerned, he didn't have any business being there. And we got him and put him someplace else. So now that brings me to my next a question to you, Dr. Williams. Because we are putting this stuff on the record tonight. Here is the most valuable question that I have to ask you. Being that they have stated that the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics have been deciphered, and we have discovered tonight and why, and the evidence that they have never been deciphered, and it's a lie, could you elaborate for us as best you can on what else and what other lies and who have told these lies have done? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, it goes back to Western academia. You got to understand that the white male has controlled this planet that we call Earth for 2,320 years. That is how long he's been in control. And him controlling this planet and all the people therein, because he terrorized every inch of this earth, including all the people who live therein the earth, on the earth. He terrorized every race of people, including himself. He has used the foundation of our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, to build himself an institution off of. But the institution that he built using the foundation of our ancestors is based off of lies, deceit, murder, injustice, corruption, greed, terrorism, militarism, sexism, racism, slavery, exploitation, drugs, violence, plunder, rape, hate, white supremacy, religion, mythology, and perverted scholarship. That's the foundation of his existence and in control of this planet that we call Earth for 2,320 years. See? So therefore, we have to understand who we are dealing with, you see? And in order for him to try to give himself something of substance as a race of people and as a human being, he has set up an institution that's based off of lies. And the institution that he set up was beginning in the Renaissance era, during the Renaissance era, in Florence, Italy. That institution that was set up in Florence, Italy, was actually set up by an African first, Emmanuel Chrysaorus, who went there in 1397 to bring and introduce the rudiments of the Greek alphabet to those hand-few students in Florence, Italy, at the Curia there. The word Curia, C-U-R-I-A, means college. And at that college, they only had a handful male students because they did not allow females to attend. You see? So this is where these lies are being emanated from, that is out here in the world today, that this European put out here in order for him to have or make himself by way of an illusion and to give himself something or make himself someone of substance, okay? That he will never do. That he could not ever do that. It's impossible because he is what he is. And his record shows what he has done over the 2,350 years, I quoted his time of control as 2,320 years is actually 2,350 years with this 2017. So I'm correcting that. So that's where all of these lies are emanating from. It's emanating from him. Donald Trump, as I speak, is the transparent and the demonstrator and the illustrator of what I just said. He illustrates all of that. All you got to do is know the history of Donald Trump, how he operates, how he go around and cheat people, and how he connives, and how greed that he is infested with, how he is so greedy that he cares about nobody but himself. He is the mirror of what I just said. So look at Donald Trump, and you can know his history and know that he is a carbon copy of what I have just explained, what I'm explaining at this very moment. So that would be my answer to you, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, well, Dr. Williams, what we're going to do is we're going to give another perspective from what we're talking about, why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. And what I want to present now, because we got this stuff going over the BBC, PBS, we got all these channels as a continuous indoctrination of the brains of the people, because the people continue to look to the television as entertainment, but it is not entertainment. It is a form of mind control. So what I want to do now, and we can take a little quick break, and we can go through a little bit of this, and when we come back, then we're going on down into the rest of the broadcast. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Developed
we'll be right
over
back.
4,000 years ago, Egyptian hieroglyphic writing is at once a fine art and a symbolic code. It was once an exalted part of Egyptian culture and continues in a timeless fashion. The shapes of these pictographs have elegant forms in their lines, and subtle distinctions between them are drawn in exacting detail, while alluding to underlying patterns of symbolism. In this presentation, historical linguist David Leonardi discusses evidence to support his alternative perspective on hieroglyphic decipherment. While Egyptologists have made some progress in deciphering the late Egyptian language, Leonardi finds evidence that ancient and Middle Egyptian are closely related to ancient Hebrew. Leonardi will also show that a proper understanding of compound symbols is necessary to decipher all phases of the Egyptian language. Additionally, evidence will be presented showing Latin influence during the late Egyptian period, which has led to some phonetic value changes. Furthermore, we will look at sample texts with some proposed transliterations and translations. We will also entertain discussions of particular symbols as we move towards our goal of uncovering the secrets of the Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Hi, my name is David Leonardi. I began my academic work in 1991 studying ancient Hebrew and then soon after studying Egyptian hieroglyphic writing. Within a few years, I began to study historical linguistics. Now, Egyptologists have made some progress in deciphering late Egyptian. I've been finding evidence of correspondences between Middle Egyptian and ancient Hebrew. By November or December of 1992, I became convinced that ancient Egyptian and Middle Egyptian were much more closely related to ancient Hebrew than what scholars have thought. I'm going to highlight three reasons why these correspondences have been overlooked by most scholars. But first, I should point out an important distinction within hieroglyphic writing. There's two types of symbols. There are regular symbols, which correspond to single phonetic values, and then there are compound symbols. A compound symbol is composed of two or more hieroglyphic symbols put together to form one symbol, and the individual parts correspond to the phonetic values that constitutes a word. So one compound symbol will correspond to a word, sometimes with prefixes and suffixes. So a good example of a compound symbol is this symbol. It's a forearm of a lion and the head of a lion. It's a curious symbol. What could this mean? Well, it's to be read actually arm, lion, head, which is Yod, Ari, Ras, which is by the acrophonic principle Y-A-R, that's Yar. Yar is the name of the Nile that the Egyptians used. We find it in the book of Exodus, and the Israelites would have used the same name for the Nile that the ancient Egyptians used. Interestingly, at the bottom of the Rosetta Stone in Greek writing, in the Greek spelling, there's the name of the language at the top of the Rosetta Stone, which is written in hieroglyphic writing, and it's called Yerois, and that compares to Yar. So ois, we know, is a Greek suffix, and yer, iota, epsilon, rho, compares to Yar with only a small vowel change. So we could actually translate Yerois as Nilotic, but of course that doesn't have anything to do with the modern language, which is called Nilotic. The first reason that I would point out why correspondences have been difficult to find is that some meanings of some Hebrew words have changed. So that makes it difficult to know what the corresponding names would be for symbols in Egyptian. So this is the most common Egyptian arm symbol, and we know it corresponds to the sound E in the late Egyptian language period, so then it could correspond to either the letter I or the letter Y. And yod in Hebrew means hand, but it originally meant arm. So if we know that originally meant arm, then we can see the correspondence between the pronunciation of this symbol and the letter Y, or the letter yod. Now, kaf or kappa is translated palm, but that originally meant hand. So this is yod. A second reason why correspondences are difficult to see is that many of the Egyptian symbols are abstract. So a couple of examples. This is an example of an abstract symbol. Even though we know to classify this with the building symbols, it's still abstract. And just very quickly, this is another abstract symbol. This symbol is composed of 3 parts. This symbol has been traditionally listed as unclassified because scholars were not sure of what it represents. It's the first letter in the Khufu cartouche, and it does correspond to the Hebrew letter Ches. This is actually the dark moon or the new moon, and interestingly, in ancient Hebrew, the word for dark and the word for new moon and new begin with the same letter, Ches. Another reason why correspondences have been difficult to see is I believe that there is substantial evidence, which we're going to look at in this next segment, showing that there was Latin influence in the changing of some phonetic values of symbols during the Greco-Roman period. So we'll look at that in this next segment.
Here we see one of the Alexander cartouches, and we can see the acrophonic principle illustrated. Accipiter Leo Calathus Z E Nauticus Trato Rictus Z. This is some of the evidence that I'm citing that Latin has had an influence replacing some of the phonetic values of symbols during the Greco-Roman period. The first symbol in the Alexander cartouche on the right side is a symbol of an eagle. Now, Egyptologists have called this the Egyptian vulture symbol, but that is not to be confused with the vulture symbol. And in ancient Hebrew, the spelling of the large bird, which is spelled Ras Aleph He, that word means look. It's based on the word Ra, which means see. And eagles are known for their sight. This bird is believed to be extinct. It's an eagle with a long beak, but it's unmistakably an eagle. On this Egyptian stela, we see the spelling in Greek of Cleopatra and Philopatrato. Now that suffix is spelled tau omicron, and we will see that in the next visual where we see the same spelling in hieroglyphs. On this example of a Cleopatra cartouche, we see Cleopatrato, and the suffix is spelled.
Okay, Dr. Williams, we're back. Are you with us?
Oh, yes, I'm here, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, now I got some more questions because, first of all, when we opened up the gentleman, he eventually started talking about abstract, and then he mentioned the Hebrews, and then he mentioned Latin influence on Egyptian hieroglyphics in the Greco era. And then he said that Ra means sea. And then he goes into the normal thing that they usually do. The Cleopatra thing is to justify putting putting vanilla on the screen, but anything except the original people of African descent African descent who are extremely dark-skinned people. So could you tell me about this abstract? What are they talking about?
Well, again, Brother Tarhaka, this is what the Europeans have concocted to bring into their institution, like I mentioned before, guys and teachers, supposed teachers like him, who has received a degree from these institutions, whereby he has been trained to talk and the language that you hear him talk on that supposed video, or that video that you played just a moment ago.
Okay.
So he's been given a degree and being passed off as an Egyptologist. So therefore, they institutionalize this stuff. Everything he said is based off of a lie. Because, again, in order for you or anybody on earth, no matter what race, creed, or color you may belong to, and there are 7 billion humans walking this earth as human beings of all race, creeds, and color, no matter who is walking this earth, cannot decipher the hieroglyphics, because you have to ask the ancient Egyptians what he or she who drew those symbols, what they mean to be. And they're not around to ask that. Secondly, he speaks of a language. You cannot use a language no matter what dialect you speak. And there are many languages out in the world today spoken by different people, many dialects and so forth and so on. No language that can be spoken that will give you the understanding and the decipherment of the hieroglyphics. The only thing that you can use with a language is to explain the meaning of those pictorial symbols known as the hieroglyphs. You can use your language to explain the meaning of them if you know the meaning of those symbols. You can use your language. You can, whatever, French or German, or English, Italian, whatever. African, any type of the African dialects, you can use any of those, any type of language to explain the meaning of the symbol. But you have to know the meaning of it. You can't say, oh, this symbol is Coptic from the Hebrew language and all that other kind of foolishness. That's foolishness. You can't use that. Hebrew came into use when the Zionists created a illegal state that is known as Israel over in Palestine. Okay? Illegitimate state created by the Zionists when the United States and Britain went to and before the UN with Cam Weissman, who became the first president of this illegal state known as Israel, and asked the UN to give these Zionists a portion of Palestine to make a statehood. That was in 1947. 1948, the next year, that was done.
Okay.
In 1948, the official language for that state that's called the State of Israel over in Palestine was called Hebrew. My question to anybody is this. Before this Hebrew was attached to Jews and Zionism, why did these Jews speak Yiddish? Why Yiddish? You see, why wasn't it Hebrew? So when in 1948, these Zionist Jews called for the confiscation and the destruction and the elimination and burning of all Yiddish literature. They used to have Yiddish plays that they would go and see. They called for anything with Yiddish in use to be confiscated and destroyed because they took the Yiddish language or the dialect that they created. This is a man-made creation to identify Jews or people who call themselves practicing Judaism. This Yiddish was to identify them as being a separate people from the rest of the people living in the countries that they resided in. Meaning that in Germany, the Jews spoke Yiddish, Yiddish is nothing but a German-based dialect, guttural type dialect that's German-based. The Jews of Germany spoke Yiddish. Okay? Yiddish was created in 1922. Okay? So after World War I ended in 1918, 1922. 4 years later, here come Yiddish. This was a created dialect to distinguish Jews living wherever they live, to distinguish them from the general population of other people. So in Germany, they spoke Yiddish, which is a German-based dialect. In Poland, they spoke a Yiddish with a Polish language-based dialect. And in Czechoslovakia, the same thing, and so forth and so on. So he speaks about Hebrew. No, you can't do that. Hebrew, that those large black calligraphy drawn letters that's known as the Hebrew alphabet. They use the alphabet or the hieratic cursive form of an alphabet that our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, created in their culture and society. If you get any of my books, for instance, you get the historical origin of Islam, and you go to the illustration section and look up the alphabet chart, and you come to that page, I think it's on 132, in my historical origin of Islam book. I will show you how this Hebrew calligraphied large black block letters, where it came from. It's all man-made, using our ancestors' alphabet to create that. But you don't have no Hebrew, like I mentioned, as a language until the creation of the illegitimate state of Israel in 1948 by the Zionist Jews who did that. So, no, I don't buy anything that individual said in his presentation in the recording that you recorded over this program.
Okay. Now, what I want to do at this point is let the listening audience know that the phone lines are now officially open. If you're listening to this by your phone, all you have to do is press 1 on the phone. We'll open up the phone lines. You get a chance to talk to our illustrious guest. The number to dial into the broadcast is 310-982-4184. That's 310-982-4184. Press 1 on your phone. And if you have a question for our guest, when you press 1, that'll give me an indication that you have something to say, and I will open up the phone lines. Okay? But in the meantime, Dr. Williams, we're going to take another little quick break, and when we come back, we're ready to deal with the phone lines. All right?
Okay. All right.
All right. So just hold on a minute, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back to deal with our guest, Dr. Walter Williams, author of the Introduction to the Historical Origins of Christianity and the Historical Origins of Islam. We'll be right back. So y'all just hold on a minute.
This is Moorish Talk Live 100. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
What does Tarhaka Secured Party and Creditor package entails? Private consultation by phone and email, the correct system for paying your property taxes in the private, the documents you will need to conduct business and transactions, public and private, Tarhaka Library, documents for status change in commerce, master study manuals, and trust guides, free credit repair with all 3 credit bureaus, a business for you in itself. Educational materials on DVD and CD sent directly to your postal box. 1099's education and how to file. How to become a private banker the right way. Asset building, protection, and investing. We also, for all of our clients, host our private conference calls. To access this kind of education and power, go to www.newdataelimination.com or call me directly, 904-303-9061. Also keep in mind, we have the top, best financial advisors there is. Peace.
And now, back to the show with Tarhaka and Moorish Talk Live 100.
Okay, Dr. Williams, are you back from your break?
Oh yes, I'm here, Brother Tarhaka.
All right, now in the little segment that we run, and keep in mind the phone lines are open, and if anybody got a question, but first of all, let me ask you this: have you found anybody that has come out and stated that you know of, or maybe on YouTube, or have contacted you, or put any information out there about the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics being deciphered? Do you know of anybody that's done that that you know of, or outside of the people that we've been talking about? Is there anything new that surfaced about that?
Well, you got many. Not many, but you got a few of scholars in the African community. You got a few non-scholars in the African community claiming that the hieroglyphics have been deciphered, but they're using what Europeans are saying to try to say that the hieroglyphics have been deciphered. They're using Europeans. They're not using their own interpretation or their own analysis as to why the hieroglyphics has been deciphered. So that's my challenge to Western academia. I am challenging Western academia. I'm telling Western academia, I'm walking to their institutions and telling Western academia that they have not and will not, have not deciphered the hieroglyphics. I've done that. And I get many answers to coming from Western academia. When you press them, they will tell you, like I mentioned before, about Peter Piccione of the University of Chicago, Frank York at the University of Chicago. When I pressed them, they had to admit, yes, you're right, but they teach it anyway. And I mentioned to you about the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language. In this dictionary, under hieroglyphics, it says that the hieroglyphics is unlegible and undecipherable. So the dictionary is telling you the same thing.
Okay.
So, and that's who wrote the dictionary is Europeans. So, so I still hold on to what I'm saying, that the hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. The Medu Netcher hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. Because you cannot put an alphabet to symbols. You cannot use a language, I don't care what language you speak, to understand those pictorial symbols drawn by our ancestors during the time of antiquity. They said that Champollion knew Coptic. Coptic what? Which dialect in Coptic? No matter what dialect, if he knew 1,000 Coptic dialects, would never tell him or explain to him the meaning of those symbols. You can't do it. And by the way, the word Coptic means a direct descendant of the ancient Egyptians. That's what the word Coptic means. But that's the reason why I'm saying that the hieroglyphics, Medu Netcher hieroglyphics, has never been deciphered. So that would be my answer.
Okay. The guy mentioned in the plug that I played, the name Ra means sea. Do you have any information on the definition of the word Ra?
Well, Ra has many definitions. Ra comes out of the culture of ancient Egyptians.
Okay.
When he speaks of Ra as being sea, Ra is also depicted as an eye, the eyeball. If you if you reach in your pocket and get a dollar bill out of your pocket, and you look at your dollar bill, you'll find a pyramid. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And on the top of that pyramid is a round ball sitting up there. That's the eye that is being depicted on top of that pyramid. That's the eye. Sometimes they say that's the eye of Horus, or sometimes they say that's the eye of Ra. So that's where that came from.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have the same stuff that's going on. We here recently, because I've had guests over to the house, and we have discussed the latest things that's coming on the PBS channel and the what's the other thing, the
History Channel.
History Channel, and about the ancient Egyptians. They never say anything about the Africans, but they are promoting and parading this Cleopatra figure as vanilla thing, once again attached to what rightfully belongs to the darker people of the planet. Could you give us some insight on this Cleopatra thing?
Well, see, Cleopatra, one has to remember, is a title.
Okay.
Cleopatra means queen, the wife of the Ptolemy. And you have 14 Ptolemies.
I got it right there. But going on, I got it right there. I see what they're doing now. But go ahead.
So you had 14 Ptolemies, starting with Ptolemy I Lagi, called Sotar, which today his image is used as the image of Jesus the Christ. But that goes into another subject. And I write about it in my book, Historical Origin of Christianity. Now, he was the first Ptolemy. And then you had 13 others following him. So a total of 14 Ptolemies. Like I mentioned before, Ptolemy, the word Ptolemy means Greek ruler of Egypt. Each Ptolemy had a wife or wives. Their wives had a title of Cleopatra. But no Cleopatra, I want the listening audience to understand this. Cleopatra All Cleopatras were European, Greek, white women. No African women involved at all. So Cleopatra is a title given to the wife of the Ptolemy rulers of ancient Egypt. Ptolemy, for instance, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, the son of Ptolemy I Lagi, his wife was named Berenice. So she's Cleopatra Berenice. Then you had Cleopatra, another Ptolemy had his wife was Cleopatra Orisno. Then you had another Ptolemy whose wife was named Cleopatra Selene, so forth and so on. So behind each wife name was the title of Cleopatra, who married one of the Ptolemies. That's the name of their wife, or the title given to their wives, the Ptolemy of rulers of ancient Egypt. So that's the answer to that.
Okay, and the reason I'm trying to get all of this straightened out over there in Egypt on the African continent, and so that after we get that straightened out as far as the truth is concerned, then we can come to what is commonly referred to as the Americas and get the truth straightened out on this continent in regards to the rightful owners of North, Central, and South America. The truth, because we got this thing going on over here about Indians, and we see the same type of behavior, the withholding of the truth, the covering up, sidestepping, ducking, and sliding under about the rightful owners of the Americas, and who was already here with established civilizations and all this stuff. So I'm trying to get this corrected over here. We come Wednesday night, we will have the Grand Chairman of the Moorish American Government with us here on Blog Talk Radio, and then later on we will be having the Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America will be with us on here, so that we can continue to unravel the truth that we can lay on the table and stand back and for somebody else to come and say, well, that's not true. Here we have the evidence, and the phone lines are open right here tonight. So if what you are saying is not true, I'm pretty sure that I have done a tremendous effort in exposing the fact that you would be here tonight to lay this on the line. So if it's not true, it would be a golden opportunity for those people who know different or who have the facts in opposition of what you're saying to call in here tonight. So the phone lines are open, and we're waiting on them to show up. They have a free pass, and now's the time for them to call in and talk to us about what they have in regards to the facts as you have laid it out for us tonight. We need to know what they got. Now, Dr. Williams, what I want to ask you now, based on what we have discussed tonight in regards to why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics have never been deciphered, and the fact that we have laid all the cards on the table and proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's all a lie. Anytime you cut your television on and you hear somebody talking about supposedly history about the what they would call them the Egyptians, but what they're not saying is the ancient African Egyptians, going all the way back from the beginning of times all the way up till today. What I want to ask you is, why would someone do that? Why would someone propagate this lie for this long? in your opinion?
Well, would be my answer to that, Brother Tarhaka, to keep white supremacy alive. As long as they teach the descendants of those African ancient Egyptians away from ancient Egypt, then the Europeans can control ancient Egypt. Like every day we get up, beginning way back in the 18th century, they've been digging and probing up the bodies of our ancestors over there, taking their artifacts out and putting them into museums all around the world, the British Museum, the Berlin Museum, the Louvre in France, and the Tehran Museum over in Tehran, Italy, and so forth and so on. And they taught us away while they do that away from ancient Egypt. Okay? This is to keep white supremacy in vogue. So they take their descendants and teach them away from that. Then they can control it. Okay? They can control our ancestors' culture and civilization. While we have been taught to love our enemy, that dead white man on the cross, which is the icon and the image and the symbol of white supremacy that has been institutionalized in all Christian churches throughout America and throughout the world. That dead white man on the cross is a symbol of white supremacy, is a symbol of white superiority, is a symbol of African inferiority, because we sit and go into these churches, sit in the pews, and worship this white male on that cross and call that white male our God and Savior. You should be ashamed of yourself for doing that. You should be embarrassed. You should hide your face, because my question to you Christians out there who uphold white supremacy as I just described it, my question to you is that, do you think that the white race will take their children and their family into a church where a big black African Jesus is hanging on the cross and teach their children and their family that this black Jesus is their God and Savior? The answer would be hell no. They will never ever do that. In fact, if this Jesus was any other than a white male, today you would not have Christianity. They will abolish it, because that Jesus is indeed something as a symbol that personifies white supremacy as I speak today. So the question, which is another question I ask Christians, what is the name of your African God that looks like you? Because that dead white man on the cross don't look like you. So this is what they're doing out here to continue to teach us descendants away from ancient Egypt, so they can control the culture and control our ancestors' civilization in their institutions. So that would be my answer, Brother Tarhaka.
Okay, Dr. Williams. Now we have I have another blockbuster, because we got people inside the United States that are calling themselves Hebrews and Hebrew Israelites. Could you give us some historicity on that for the record?
All right. There's no such thing as a Hebrew. The question I've asked these black Hebrew Israelites is, where is Abraham buried? In order for you to be a Hebrew, you have to have an Abraham who came or went yonder, okay, into the promised land. So they say, I am from the blood of Abraham. When the Jews are saying, and Western academia is saying, that there's never been an Abraham. Now, if an individual get a book called The Original Torah, written by a rabbi who teaches at the Hebrew Union College in New York City. He wrote this book 17 years ago called The Original Torah. In his book, he's saying there's never been an Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Gideon, Esau, David, Solomon, or Joshua. And Walter Williams comes back and says that every character named in the Bible, 99 and 9/10 of every character named in the Bible, never walked the earth in human form. So today, as I speak, Western academia and rabbis coming from the Jewish community will tell you that there's never been an Abraham. So why are you continuing to be from the blood of Abraham when it's over with? The truth is out now. I've been telling you for years there's no Abraham, but you won't believe me. Now, white folks who call themselves Jews are telling you the same thing. In fact, the book I just mentioned came out, the original Torah in the year 2000, is telling you the same thing. So that will be my answer to you. There's no such thing as a Hebrew, because it goes back to the Bible. The Bible has no historical worth at all. The same S. David Spurgeon, who wrote the book that I just mentioned called The Original Torah, he also said, I am compelled to read the Torah allegorically because it cannot be read historically. That meaning that the Torah, the Bible, and all religious literature cannot be read historically because it is literature that's attached to a lie, a religion. All religions are man-made. No human on earth was born coming out of their mother's body with a religion. You had an indwelling, divine, spiritual birthright, which is your life that's indwelling inside of you at this very moment that I'm talking to you. But you will not have in your possession a religion. Man created a religion and gave it to man to control the thinking and the actions of man. That's what the religion is all about. So no, there's no such thing as a black Hebrew Israelite, because you got to, in order to have a black Hebrew Israelite, you got to have an Abraham, and Abraham has been denounced by Western academia and the Jewish community. Brother Tarhaka?
Okay, well, Dr. Williams, you've said a tremendous amount. We're going to take a little quick break, and when we come back, we'll be finishing up the broadcast, okay?
Okay.
All right. Y'all hold on, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.
Said if you ever
back our illustrious guest, Dr. Walter Williams, on why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. The phone lines is open. The number to dial is 310-982-4184. 310-982-4184. And we'll open up the phone lines so that you can get in. If you got a question for our guest, now's the time to call in. I see a caller with the hand raised at area code 312. I'm going to open up the phone lines. Area code 312. Could you tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and what's your question for our guest?
My name is Yoel. I'm calling from the Windy City of Chicago. And I got a question for
Dr. Yoel. Welcome, bro.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good afternoon, my brother.
Gratitude, Mr. Professor Walter Williams.
Yes, sir, Mr. Yoel. My brother.
I just thought I'd call and for the sake of those people who maybe didn't come in on time or reluctant to maybe even ask a question and ask so they can get some clarity, clarification breeds no question, and ask Dr. Williams, he's saying that 100% of the hieroglyphics have never been deciphered, 50%, 10%, or what?
No percent.
You believe any percentage?
No, sir.
No percent. None of it?
None.
None.
Nada. But you have to ask the ancient Egyptians who drew those symbols what he or she meant for them to be. They weren't around and not around to ask that question. If I drew a symbol of my own device and design, if I asked you the meaning of that symbol, you couldn't give me the answer to that question because you had to ask me. I drew the symbol. In my books, Historical Origin of Christianity, on page 146, I'm using 4 pages to explain why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics never been deciphered. So my answer to your question is none.
Okay, so if there was anybody in present-day Egypt today or over here that their father, their grandfather told their father, they said their grandfather told their father what a couple of those glyphs mean, you don't think there's nobody like that out there?
Well, see, that's taken from their opinion, okay? I still hold to my premises that you have to ask the ancient Egyptians who drew those symbols what he or she meant for them to be when they was drawn during the time of antiquity. You're talking about thousands of years going back into that culture of ancient Egypt. Thousands of years. I'm not talking about no generations of centuries. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about thousands of years.
I got one more. Now, do you think it's anybody in Egypt today that are not the so-called Arabs that are there, the non-Arabs that made...
Go ahead.
Are you with us, brother? Brother Yoel. Okay, his call, maybe his call had dropped. He'll be coming back in, Dr. Williams. But until he gets back in, I would like to, for you, if you could, to give us a description on what's commonly called. Here he is. He's back right now. He's back.
Okay.
All right, you back. Come on.
I forgot. I thought maybe I was on WVON when that happened. I got cut off.
know what you mean.
I know. I'm on WVOE, and I forgot they cut you off when you ask a question.
Right.
Okay. So I was asking if there's anybody you think that's there now that's not a member of the so-called Arab people who are there dwelling there right now that may be descendants from the ancient Egyptians there or over here for that matter that may be revealing or might have some of that information today?
No, sir. You over in Egypt, you got the Nubians. That's the closest.
Okay.
And closest descendants living in Egypt today, they call themselves Nubians, which are
so
they are
do
the
you
direct
think any of those might have? Do you think any of those people might have it?
No. I've been over there. No.
Really? Okay. Lastly, then I say this: that we living in the times now when we going into and Tarhaka could relate to this. We going into the information age, which is Aquarius, and now also supposedly prophecy states that knowledge would be on the increase in these times. So you think any of this information that's coming out now or will be coming out will be something pertaining to an interpretation of those hieroglyphs?
You say interpret? No. They can come out with whatever they want to come out with, Brother Yoel. I still hold to my original reason as why the Medu Netcher Hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. You have to ask the ancient Egyptian who drew those symbols what he or she meant for them to be when they drew them during the time of antiquity, which is ancient times. That's very simple. That's number two. Okay. You cannot put an alphabet with to a symbol. Impossible. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You can't use any language to decipher those hieroglyphic symbols. You have to know the meaning of those symbols. If you know the meaning of those symbols, then you can explain it into whatever language that you talk or speak, or dialect that you talk or speak. So that's my answer.
Let me say that once more. According to astrology, we're going into what we call Aquarius. Aquarius astrologically represents the information age. Is that right, Tarhaka?
Well, that's what it's supposed to represent. But we have to ask the question, who is giving us astrology? Okay. Now, let's assume for the sake of the conversation that that's true. Mm-hmm. It represents the information age. Since we do know we're being bombarded by a lot of information right now, that's a fact, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now, if and then supposedly there's some prophecies that states that at the end of the Piscean age, a lot of stuff that has been hidden would be revealed coming into the information age. And it wouldn't be necessarily new information, would it be old information that was hidden being revealed? Do you think any of that would be any interpretations of those symbols?
You can't use that as an analogous to give an answer or have a question about the hieroglyphics. So therefore, you have no proof of what they're saying to be correct. You have to take the individual who comes up and say, I've deciphered the hieroglyphics, like they took Champollions of reasons as to why he said that he deciphered 7 to 9 glyphs. Okay? So therefore, you can't do that unless you want to do it. I wouldn't accept it myself. Because, then you go back into, you're going back into something that is based off of I think this is right, or maybe, and all that kind of, and suppose, I believe, and all that. See, believe, suppose, I think does not give you knowledge. Okay? So you have to know what you're talking about in order to bring out the true facts on the subject.
Okay.
Well, I need to let me put
my case.
let me throw my little 2 cent worth in there based on
Come on, give me your 2 cents.
Documents and stuff that I've read.
Okay.
I know y'all have heard me say a whole lot about artificial time and natural time, but actually what I've been talking to you about is artificial time versus universal life. Based on the information that I've read, I know that we were talking about 2 different cultures. We're talking about a culture, and I'm not just dealing with what I have read and studied and researched. I'm talking about also what I have actually talked to and sit down, man to man and man to woman and woman to man, from Africa, and I know that what they was telling me was absolutely true, because I sat down right here in my living room, and there was a woman in her culture where she came from, and I'm not going to call any names, I'm not going to call her name. Where she come from, she said that there is no violence, there is no crime. It is her duty to acknowledge her husband and to do what her husband tells her to do, just like her father. That is her custom. Now, this woman was inside the United States, and the brother who, he's a dear, very, very close friend of mine. He travels all over the world. He has married her and brought her from her country to this country. And he was traveling, and periodically he calls me on the phone, and we talk while he's on the road, and he's taking her and showing her around America and all this stuff. And they stopped over in Texas, and there was the news was on, and some woman out in California had been killed, and her children had been killed. And that girl, that was like a total culture shock to her. And he told me, he said, man, he said, I never seen anything like it. She waking me up all night long. She said she can't sleep. She waking me up so we can stand up and be vigilant and make sure it don't come over there, because where she come from, no such thing has ever happened. And it doesn't happen over there. And I know for a fact, based on the research and study that I've done, the same thing happened to Egypt. The same thing happened to the countries of Africa. You have a people here in these places who thrive on truth, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, even though we have other people who try to exploit that and say, well, these were warring people, and that was not in their nature. That's a lie. And when the people who were nature savages came into these areas, it represented automatic poison, disruption, and destruction and damnation. You had people who would gather up the knowledge from the elders' guidance and say, take this, that, and the other. We don't have a hiding place. Put it on a horse and a camel or what have you, and travel and move it away from this type of behavior and these type of people, because they're savages. And a lot of these people were captured, traveling across the tundra, trying to take the legacy and the truth and the foundation of civilization with them on parchments, just like a declaration of trust, to escape with it, to keep it from falling in the hands of the enemies. And they were captured and taken to foreign lands. And they acknowledged it, did not know it, and these people were forced to tell them what it means. They were put up in high positions and taken care of as long as they deciphered this information to the savages who knew nothing about it. So I know for a fact that what Dr. Williams is saying tonight is synonymous with what I've already researched and known for years and years and years. In answer to your question about some future deciphering or exposure to the hieroglyphics being deciphered, the answer would have to be no. They never will be. Never, ever. And there is nothing new under the sun. And what we think, most of us, a lot of us think that time is speeded up. Time has never speeded up. Time, as we know it today, is exactly the way it was since the beginning of time. What has speeded up is our association with technology, which has usurped the biosphere and the natural rhythm of life. All you have to do is watch nature. Nature continues to try to do what is normal and natural for them to do since the beginning of time. The only interference that they have is from what is called mankind. So when we take all of these things into the equation, it gives us greater understanding. When it comes to astrology and astronomy and stuff like that, it is very, very amusing to me, and I'll check it out. But I still have to ask the question, who's giving it to me? And how could you possibly have it? Because I have the chronological of time when I know for a fact that you couldn't even spell the word astrology, let alone tell me what it means. And even when you go into the temples of ancient Kemet on the North American continent, and they are also in the Americas, a lot of them are covered up and guarded, and all this stuff is there. This science comes from us. And once you get this science from the right place down to a science, you will rule the world. And this is what is being withheld from you. Science and spirituality have nothing to do with religion. Now, I think I've put out too much information. I'm going to be quiet. Dr. Williams, you want to come on in and so that we can go on and get on down to the close of this thing?
Okay, well, every word that you spoke, Tarhaka, is the truth. You really laid it out, and you spoke with words of truth coming from observation that you observed and learned throughout your life, from your childhood up until this very moment. So I agree with everything that you said, and it's based on the truth. So, again, we have to get back to our ancestors, racially and spiritually. We have to unify around our ancestors. Thereby, if we do this unification around our ancestors, then we will have a nationality. At this moment, 50 to 60 million Africans in this country are without a national or identity, a nationality to unify around. We have been misled in this country that we live in. We've been misled by the school system that has taught us and have impacted our thinking with lies, deceit, coming from the European, doing that on purpose, to teach us and guide us away from the racial and spiritual connection to our African ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. We are the most powerful people on this planet, walking this earth. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the whole world of humanity is following this Negro who is planet in this country called the Americas. This Negro is leading this whole planet of humanity. They're following us. But we have to make our way back and claim our greatness, because our greatness is unclaimed in the continent of Africa, in the country called Egypt in Africa. From the culture of our ancestors, emanated from that culture, the rudiments of civilization that has been used throughout this whole entire world. No human on earth, and you got over 7 billion humans of all races, creeds, and color. No human on earth is walking this earth without using the coming from our ancestors' culture, the rudiments of what they used and created in their culture. So it's all over the world. Every time you get up, every morning, and you come into this world, no matter where you go, the symbols of our ancestors, the foundation of our ancestors is being utilized. So we have to find our way back to ancient Egypt and claim our greatness as being the greatest people that has ever walked this earth as human beings, because our ancestors left us that immortal legacy to make that claim. So that's what I have to say about that, Brother Tarhaka. And to you also, Brother Yoel.
Brother Yoel, what you got to say for yourself going down to the closing?
Well, I only have this to rebut all of what y'all say. That is, that I'm one of the descendants from the ancient Egyptians. So deal with that.
If you do that, we can't even put the gloves on. How we gonna have a fight with somebody?
That's right.
We can't.
I ain't gonna throw a blow.
We can't do nothing with you. Well, I
hope everybody else out there listening in the listening audience got that, and I hope they understand. If not, just keep searching and keep listening to your radio program so they can get it.
Well, you know
don't
what,
be afraid
y'all.
to call in.
Well, I think, the brothers and sisters. I've been doing this for quite a while, and I learned a long time ago. It is not that they are afraid to call in. What they are doing is they are listening and they are taking notes and they are learning, and they don't want no interruptions. And so they sit back and they check it out and they listen. And these are not only the Moors and the ancient African Egyptians. We have the Greeks, we have the Mexicans, we have everybody. Everybody be listening and checking this out. And all you got to do is hunch one of them and say, call in and straighten it out. And they be like, not me. I'm finna mess with it. And that's a good thing, because you can learn some things, but I want the people to know that I certainly appreciate you guys coming in and dropping this information. And Dr. Walter Williams, I certainly appreciate you, because you have dissected the African continent. But coming up, starting Wednesday and then going forward in the month of April, we will be coming to America on this broadcast, and we will be dissecting this hemisphere as well. And I thank you all for coming in. So if you have any last words, now's the time to tell them to me. We got 9 minutes. What you got, Dr. Williams?
Well, I want to say this, Brother Tarhaka. I want to say this, Brother Tarhaka, is this. We, as an African people, living in the United States of America, we have to take control of our own ancestors' history. We can no longer allow other people or other interests to give us a name for us. We have to know who we are. We have to know who our ancestors are. So we have to take control once we know who we are and know who our ancestors are. And I'm talking about our ancestors being the descendants, or I am talking about our ancestors being the ancient Egyptians. I am a descendant of the ancient Egyptian. Tarhaka Amalil Bey is a descendant of the ancient Egyptian. Brother Yoel and all Africans living in this continent or this hemisphere that we call North Africa are descendants of the ancient Egyptians. And the thing about it, the Spanish and the Portuguese told us just that, because they took the enslaved African out of Africa and brought them over here in the Americas, in North America, and enslaved them with the help of the Roman Catholic Church. And they named these enslaved Africans the name that the Spanish gave to the Africans who came into Spain and brought civilization into Spain. They named them Negroes, blacks. Negro and black is synonymous. That's the same name that the Spanish gave to those Africans coming from Morocco and Mauritania, and they called them the Black Moors. So therefore, when they put the Moors, those Africans over in this hemisphere who brought civilization and advanced civilization to this hemisphere, which was the third world civilization that was set up by the Moors or by our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. They put this Moor and this enslaved African under one umbrella and said, you are both Negroes. So they did us a favor, because they told us that we are Moors. They call us Negroes, and Negro and black is synonymous. So therefore, all of us are Moors over in this country under that name. Because we call each other black people. You're only calling yourself Moorish people. You're Moor, okay? And you can trace the Moor back to being a direct descendant of the ancient Egyptian. The Moor and the ancient Egyptian is one and the same. One and the same, no difference. So that is some of the things that I have to say, and I want to bring out to our listening audience. Brother Tarhaka.
All right, Brother Yoel, what's your closing statements, other than that you ain't getting in the ring? What you got, man? Okay.
Well, I'd just like to say that as you are doing and as Professor Williams is doing, I'd just like to chime in on I'm trying to do the same thing from the Underground Bookstore at 1727 East 87th Street in Chicago, Illinois. Telephone number 773-768-8869. Any kind of written information you need or you're looking for, you can check me out, and if I ain't got it, then I'll find it for you. So that's what I'd have to say in closing.
All right, you got to give us the address one more time.
All right, that's 1727 East 87th Street in Chicago, Illinois, 60617. Just give me a call at 773-768-8869, and we'll find that book, whatever it is you're looking for. If I don't have it, I'll find it for you. All right? Thank you.
All right. Well, you know,
Brother Tarhaka.
Yes, sir.
Brother Tarhaka. Hello.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
I would like to say this. I would like to tell the listening audience, if you want to contact me, Walter Williams, you can email me at ancientegiption@msn.com. That's ancient, ANCIENT. Egyptian, EGYPTIAN at MSN.com. When you email me, put your phone number there, and I'll call you back, and we can further have a conversation. If you want to purchase my books, The Historical Origin of Christianity and The Historical Origin of Islam, you can go on Amazon and purchase that book, or you can purchase that book through the Underground Bookstore that UL is the owner of. And the Underground Bookstore, he gave you the address, 1727 East 87th Street in Chicago, and he also gave you the phone number, 773-768-8869. You can call him and you can order my books, The Historical Origin of Christianity and The Historical Origin of Islam. So that's what I want to close with, and I enjoyed being on your program. In fact, I always enjoy being on your program every time you invite me on. So I want to thank you, Brother Tarhaka, for having this program and this platform for people like myself to come on to disseminate the truth and facts. This is what I try to do, to disseminate the truth and facts to our African community in America, so we as a people can begin to evolve instead of keep revolving. As long as you keep revolving and not evolve, there's no way for you to grow. So this program provides a platform for the growth of evolving. So this is what I have to say, and I want to thank you again for having this program and inviting me on, and also having a program where Brother UL can call in and be a part of it. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Well, you know, brothers, a lot of times the sisters be complaining about the men not being home and out and busy and doing different things. But tonight, that wasn't the case. The men were home tonight, and I certainly appreciate you all for being on the broadcast. And I'm going to go ahead and close this thing out. And for the listening audience, I hope that we have provided some information for you to consider and to make some corrections on. And, brother, you all have a good night. And, ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host, Tarhaka Omana El-Bey. Until the next time, y'all have a good evening, okay?
I'm lonely for my baby, because, I've been gone so long. And I got a letter this morning. And when I read the letter, it made me want to come home. I said, I'm going to take the tension off you, baby, because I'm on my way. And I guarantee you it won't be long. Yeah, baby.